Okay. Good evening, everybody. Let's start by cultivating our motivation. And just for a moment, expand your mind to include all the planets and solar systems and world systems throughout the entire universe, throughout all of space. And think of how many sentient beings there are in different forms, some that we can perceive with our senses, some that we can't, all undergoing their own individual experiences right now due to karma and afflictions, all wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And all having been kind to us in the past, and who will be kind to us in the future. Because we can't stay alive without the efforts of others, and we can't attain Buddhahood independent of others either. So our lives are inextricably bound up with the lives of all sentient beings. So seeing that, it makes sense to care for them as much as we care for ourselves. And to try and become Buddhas so that we can be of the greatest benefit to them, considering all that they have done, are doing, and will do to benefit us both temporally and spiritually. And so cultivate the bodhicitta. Before we continue with the topic of emptiness, I wanted to talk a little bit about how faith and wisdom go together, because sometimes we don't understand that very well. And especially since we hear that some disciples are principally depend on faith and others principally depend on wisdom, we might think that, it's an either-or situation. But actually within all of us, faith, here faith meaning confidence or trust in the three jewels, and not blind faith or blind trust, but based on some understanding. So when we study the teachings, especially this last week, with Guy here, and really going into the two truths in depth, when we study, we're really cultivating wisdom through hearing, through learning, thinking about, and meditating. So we're cultivating wisdom, and that requires a certain capacity of mind, right? Do you feel that mind get stretched this week? Mm-hmm. You bet. Okay. Now, as your mind gets stretched and you begin to get some sense of what the Buddha is talking about or what Nagarjuna is talking about, even if the sense you're getting is that it's totally upsetting your worldview. Yeah. Not that you're understanding everything, but you're feeling like, Mamma mia, I don't understand anything except that my worldview is really screwed up, but I don't really understand how things exist at all, okay? But just you know, that part of you getting woken up, you know, to start that inquiry that you know is really important, because that's going to be the thing that gets you out of samsara. Okay? And so, because you're thinking about this material that was taught by the Buddha, that was taught by the great lineage masters, then, and we're seeing that it makes some sense, even if the sense is that it's shaking up our worldview, our old complacent worldview, then automatically we come to have some gratitude and respect and appreciation for the Buddha and the lineage masters, don't we? Yeah, automatically. It's like, wow, these people are onto something really important, and they've been kind enough to, you know, not just understand it conceptually, but realize it with single-pointed concentration, and then out of compassion give teachings on it so that I could come in contact with it. So then you have this sense of faith and appreciation and a sense of trust in them, because you can see some little bit of what they're saying is true, and so that develops an attitude of trust. Okay? And so then when you go to bow, your bowing is really sincere because you really feel respect for the Buddha and these great masters. Yeah? And so then it's not just bowing for bowing, it's, you know, you really feel respect because you respect the teachings. And when you go to make offerings to them, then you really feel like, wow, these are very special living beings. I want to make offerings to them. You know, because offering is a way that we ordinary beings connect with those that we have high regard for. Okay? And so, you know, when you have that kind of wisdom come, then the faith wakes up too. But it's faith based on wisdom and conviction. And that faith has more of an emotional tone, but you can also combine it with wisdom, because when you're bowing to the Buddha, you could be, examining, is that Buddha truly existent or not? Yeah? Or is the Buddha I'm bowing to arising from the same substantial cause as my mind perceiving him? You know? So you bring the view of emptiness right into the prostrating or making offerings or whatever. You know, I say I'm making offerings. What actually is an act of offering? You know, can I find what an act of offering is? What is it? Is it findable in the basis of designation? Okay, so you bring that view of emptiness into these more faith or devotional-based practices, such as prostrating, offering, and so on, okay? Or visualizing the deity or reciting mantra, you know. So, and that faith that comes about, it's a completely different quality of mind, isn't it? There's something open and very clear and very gentle and yet very strong, you know, and you really feel connected when there's strong faith and trust in the triple gem in your mind. And so that faith or trust relaxes the mind, it opens the mind, it makes the mind more receptive. So then when you hear teachings later, those teachings go in. Yeah? Because you know how it is when our mind is full of resistance. The Buddha could be in front of us, and we're sitting there, yeah, show me, prove it to me. Yeah, come on, you know, I want to hear what you say, Buddha. I want you to prove it to me that things aren't inherently existent. You know, so when our mind is full of resistance, you know, Buddha could be here, nothing goes in. Yeah, so that kind of trust or confidence, you know, is the opposite of that mind of resistance, isn't it? Yeah, and we really have to tame that mind of resistance in order to be able to let the teachings in for our wisdom to grow. Okay? So do you see how, you know, when we hear the teachings and develop wisdom, then it helps us to develop deeper faith and confidence, which opens the mind and makes the mind more receptive. And then when we hear teachings, we really take them more seriously. They touch our heart more, our wisdom develops more, we develop more appreciation and trust and faith, and so the things go back and forth like that. Okay? And so I really notice, like, during the first month of the retreat, when I was, editing some of Khensur Jampa Tekchok's teachings on emptiness, I was using that wisdom analytical faculty really hard during the day. And then when we went in to do the prostrations in the evening, it was like just completely different, but I felt so connected, because of during the day really thinking about those teachings and appreciating them. Okay? And then that faith and devotion, it kind of relaxes the mind in a certain way. Okay, so we need both of those things. If we just focus on the wisdom and never develop any appreciation or faith or devotion, then I think our wisdom is somehow just very conceptual and it's not really hitting home, Because if it hits home, we have some gratitude and appreciation and trust. It comes automatically. Okay, so if we're just on the wisdom side, then the mind, it becomes too intellectual and too sterile. If we go too much on the faith side and we're just reciting mantra and doing sadhanas because we feel good doing that, then we just stay in this feel-good state, but we don't develop our wisdom because we're not really thinking about the teachings. And so this is why, His Holiness really emphasizes the analytic meditation on the Lamrim as the tool that really helps your wisdom grow. And then also, prior to doing that meditation, then you do the things that help purify and accumulate merit, like taking refuge, generating bodhicitta, the 4 immeasurables, the 7 limbs, the mandala, the requests, and those things, because those help, loosen the mind, make it more receptive. Okay? So do you see how these two things, in our practice, it's very good to put them together in a very skillful way. Because if we go too much to one side or too much to the other side, we get a little off. Okay? And then also, you can see that, the Buddha really, starting with the Pali Canon, emphasized this whole thing of investigation and examination into our own experience. Yeah. So while we are hearing the teachings, initially, of course we're dealing with conceptual minds. That's fine. That's the only way. Once we have language and teachings, whenever you hear teachings, you're dealing with the conceptual mind, aren't you? Yeah? Because otherwise, with our direct senses, all we know is red and green and sounds, but the sounds don't make any sense, and smells and tastes and hard and soft and hungry and thirsty. And what else can we do? We're not going to develop any wisdom just by our senses alone, just by direct perception alone, at our ordinary level. We need those correct conceptual consciousnesses. And then, of course, the whole purpose is to go beyond those conceptual consciousnesses into direct perception. Yeah? But we've got to really use that inquiring mind. Yeah? So it's not just a thing of developing concentration and having mindfulness and watching what's going on in our mind. We have to also understand what's going on in our mind. Okay? Otherwise, you sit there and you watch your breath and breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. But you can develop some concentration that way. But just by noting in and out, your wisdom isn't necessarily going to increase, is it? Yeah? Whereas if you start investigating a little bit, yeah, like I say I'm breathing in and out, how do I know that? This is something I do sometimes. When my mind is saying, I'm doing this or I'm feeling this, I say to myself, how do I know that I'm doing that or feeling this? In other words, what is the basis of designation upon which I am labeling this activity? Okay? So if you say I'm breathing, well, what are the sensations happening in my body that are the basis of designation for saying I'm breathing? And what's the difference between, those sensations versus breathing? Are the two things exactly the same? Are they different? Are they inherently the same? Are they inherently different? Okay, so we start to develop our wisdom by questioning these things, Or you're watching your breath and some strong emotion comes. Or you're saying mantra and some strong emotion comes. I mean, this happens all the time. It doesn't matter whether you're meditating on the breath or reciting mantra or visualizing the Buddha or doing Lam Rim. Emotions come up and thoughts come up, don't they? Doesn't matter what you're doing. This is the nature of the distracted mind. So some garbage comes up. So then, then you watch and you see how the mind can instantly buy into the garbage and become completely involved in it because it takes the whole thing as true. Yeah? Or you could watch, let's say anger comes, or attachment comes, or worry comes, and you identify that mind, oh, that's worry, that's attachment, that's anger. And then to say, okay, how do I know I'm worrying? How do I know that's worry? Yeah? And when you ask that, then that really refines your mindfulness. Because we often say, oh, I'm so worried. And then we just stay on the level of worry, 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 worry. Yeah? And then we react to the statement, I'm worried. Oh, I'm worried. Oh, that's no good. Oh, I'm tense again. I shouldn't be so worried, but I'm really worried and the situation is so bad. So then all this, we say I'm worried and then all this other stuff happens on top of that. Whereas if we just look and we say there's worry, and then we say, how do I know I'm worried? On what basis am I saying I'm worried? And then you look in your body, you look in your mind, what kind of thoughts are there that make me say I'm worried? What kind of sensations are there in the body that make me say I'm worried? Is there some kind of worry that is separate from those physical sensations and those mental thoughts? Yeah? Because how we say, I'm worried. Or what I like is I'm tired, Because as soon as I say to myself, I'm tired, then I'm in a bad mood. I'm tired. Not the bad mood grows over time. It doesn't happen instantly. But, it's like I'm tired, and then immediately I have to go to sleep. I don't want to do anything else. I don't feel like doing anything else. Why doesn't the world leave me alone so I can just go to sleep and rest because I'm tired? As soon as I say I'm tired, all this other junk comes. Does this happen to you? Yeah? And so at that point, I'm so involved in the saying I'm tired that I don't even know what the basis of designation is upon which I'm saying I'm tired. In other words, I'm totally out of touch with my own experience, and I'm just wrapped up in I'm tired and I don't like being tired and I need to do X, Y, Z to deal with my being tiredness, my being tired. Whereas if I say, how do I know I'm tired? And I sit there, okay, and then there's a certain sensation I get in my eyes. Yeah? Now you may be different. It's very interesting, because we often may not even know why we say I'm tired. We just say I'm tired, but we never investigate what our experience is, So I know there's a certain kind of feeling in my eyes, but that feeling isn't in my eyes that isn't tired per se. It's just some kind of sensation. Yeah? So what's the difference between that sensation and I'm tired? Because they're different. They're different. That sensation is just that sensation. I'm tired is like, I got to do something and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So it's very interesting, to watch what kind of sensations are there in my body, or what kind of thoughts in my mind that are the basis of designation for me saying I'm tired. And are they really that bad that I need to get in such a bad mood when I say I'm tired? Yeah? You getting what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Or like how we say, I don't feel well. Yeah? As soon as we say to ourselves, I don't feel well, then there's this whole other thing. I don't feel well, that's because I'm working too hard, it's these other people's fault because they're pushing me and there's too much on my plate and I want to be left alone and I want to go crawl in my bed and I don't feel well and I'm tired of not feeling well, and on and on and on, right? Okay, and we're pretty miserable just by saying the words to ourselves, I don't feel well. But if we stop and say, what is the basis of designation of saying I don't feel well? Okay, what exactly is it? Yeah, is there some sensation in my stomach, some sensation in my head, some sensation in the back of my throat? And is that sensation not feeling well? Or is that sensation just a sensation? Okay, what's the relationship between those different sensations and my thought, I don't feel well? It's very interesting. Or when you feel very happy, when we feel happy, then it's, and we're like all over the place, bouncing off the walls. And then to stop and say, on what basis do I say I feel happy? What is that happy feeling? What does it actually feel like to feel happy? Yeah, because we get usually so involved in the I feel happy that we're out of touch with what the experience of happiness is. If you know what I mean, it's just like we have some experience, we say I'm happy, and then we forget the experience and then just get involved in I'm happy. Okay? So do you see how this whole thing of designated object and basis of designation, how you can bring that like right into your own experience and examine that? Okay, so it's quite interesting to do that when different things come up, either when you're meditating or when you're walking or sitting or, lying down or whatever, just to be aware of those things. Okay, so that was just something about faith and wisdom and integrating it in our life. We're just warming up. Okay, so as I said before, the translation here is not always so good, so I'm not always going to read from the book. I may read from it sometimes, but I don't want to read things that don't seem quite right to me. But the next topic, the topic it's getting into here, is talking about the 4 seals. We touched on this last time. Did we touch on it? Okay. But actually, you know what? Before I get into that, there were a bunch of questions. Okay. Let me do the questions first. And your question I'll answer in the course of getting into what I'm going to talk about. Okay? So, let's backtrack. The questions. So, regarding the Prasangikas saying that the lower systems don't refute enough, is this purely a philosophical argument? Otherwise, how can they refute that by whatever means countless practitioners espousing the lower schools have attained liberation? That's not true. people espousing the lower schools have not attained liberation. Okay? They don't have the correct view. Now, does that mean that everybody who is in a country where a certain view is prominent, that they all follow that view? No. Does it even mean that people who say they follow that system necessarily have the same interpretation of that system as everybody else? No. Okay? So for example, the Buddha said, you know, in the first turning of the Dharma wheel, there were parts that were definitive, in other words, that talked about emptiness, and that could be understood as they are. And then there were parts that were interpretable. Yeah. Now, most of the people who rely on the first turning of the Dharma wheel may rely on the interpretable teachings, but that doesn't mean all of them do, and that none of them pick out the definitive teachings. Okay, same thing with the third turning, yeah? You know, there's interpretable teachings in there. Does that mean everybody in that country or everybody who says that, you know, I follow that necessarily have that same view? No. Okay? So it's possible for people, you know, living in other countries and other forms of Buddhism, you know, and even other religions, to have the correct view. Yeah, you look puzzled.
Where do they get it? How do they get it taught?
You look, I mean, I've been reading the Pali Canon. There's some parts in there. It's like, it looks pretty clear to me that it's talking about emptiness here. Yeah? So if somebody has quite sharp faculties, and it also depends on, you know, what they have heard in previous lives. And of course, bodhisattvas appear in all these different countries and all these different traditions. You know, the Tibetans may be the only ones who have a system of recognizing great masters. That doesn't mean that, you know, all those people are bodhisattvas, and it doesn't mean bodhisattvas don't appear anywhere else. So you could have bodhisattva teachers in other countries who are teaching prasangika view, you know, and the students who are receptive, who have sharp faculties, will pick that up. Okay? But you have to have the correct view of emptiness in order to attain liberation. If you don't have the correct view, then you know, you're still wallowing in samsara. Okay? Because if you could get liberated without the correct view of emptiness, why are we studying all this anyway? Why are we exerting so much effort to try and understand the prasangika view and get the correct view if any old view will get you liberated? Okay? But see, the point here is we shouldn't get locked into these very rigid conceptions of, you know, well, everybody who says I'm a blah blah believes this, or everybody who lives in this country believes this, or everybody who even goes to this teacher believes this. Yeah? There could be whole different things going on. Because they say, you know, when the Buddha teaches, he teaches according to the capability of the student. You know, so there's one passage in the Pali Canon where it talks about the five aggregates, and the body is like is like foam, and feelings are like a water bubble, and discriminations are like, whatever, one of them is like a plantain tree. I can't remember all of them, but they all have, you know, analogies for them. And if you're sharp and you think about these things, yeah, it's very clear the Buddha's talking about, you know, the emptiness of phenomena, the selflessness of phenomena, right there. Okay? And if phenomena are selfless, then the I that's, you know, imputed independence upon them is also selfless. Okay? Satisfied?
No, but I'll think about it.
Okay. Think about it. Okay. Up to the point of bodhicitta eliminating cognitive obscurations. Now that's incorrect. Bodhicitta does not eliminate cognitive obscurations. Wisdom does. Okay? But that wisdom has to be supported by the bodhicitta motivation to become strong enough and have the sufficient collection of merit to be strong enough to eliminate the cognitive obscurations. Okay, isn't the elimination of afflictions on the path to Buddhahood the same as the Arhat's elimination? Okay, so up to the point where bodhisattvas have eliminated all of the afflicted obscurations, aren't they eliminating the same things as the hearers and solitary realizers? Yes. Yeah. And all of them have the prasangika view. Jain Rinpoche was very, very clear about that in Gompa Rapsal. Now, according to the lower systems, and we'll get into this, according to the lower systems, to be liberated from samsara, you don't need to realize the emptiness of inherent existence. You just need to realize the selflessness of persons, which is the absence of a person being self-sufficient, substantially existent. But that's according to the lower schools. According to the Prasangika, you need to realize the lack of true existence of the person and of all phenomena to be liberated. So the lower schools give a much easier version of how to get liberated. But according to the Prasangika view, that was taught as skillful means for people who would get frightened by hearing the Prasangika view and hearing everything you have to do in order to get liberated. Okay? So the Buddha taught that as a stepping stone, because if you realize the lack of a self-sufficient, substantially existent person, that's going to help you a lot in realizing the emptiness of inherent existence of the person. Okay? You thinking about that one too?
Yeah, like how does it get to be a school? I mean, certainly they must have some evidence that it works, or it wouldn't have become a school.
Okay. So they must have, okay. Well, here, so you must have some evidence that it works, so it must, in order to become a school. Well, there's different ways of thinking about this. One could be that the Buddha taught that view specifically for people with that mental faculty and that disposition in mind. And so he taught that view, and for people whose disposition and inclinations fit that view, they adopted it and they became part of a school. Okay? So, of course, meditating on the lack of, on the selflessness of a self-sufficient, substantially existent person is very good. And if you do that, combining serenity and insight, very good. And you eliminate a lot of junk in your mind. But, you haven't actually gotten any true cessations yet because you don't have the correct view. Okay? So you can have a lot of experience and a lot of deep insights, but not necessarily have the correct view. Remember what we were saying about the Jonangpas and His Holiness saying that, some of them, like Dopopa, had great realizations on the completion stage. Yeah, but he didn't have the correct view, so he, according to the Prasangika, you can have all sorts of other realizations, but without having, even eliminated any afflictions from the root. Okay, even in Tantra, the Hindus can dissolve the winds into the central channel. Yeah? That's quite difficult to do. That's quite something. They can do that, but they don't have the correct view. Okay? So that's why, our teachers put so much emphasis on really trying to get the correct view. Why that's so important. Because you can have lots of experiences. I mean, Tara can appear to you, but if Tara appears to you and you don't have the correct view, yeah, then it's, hi, Tara, but, yeah. Hopefully Tara will inspire you to, study more and meditate more and gain the correct view. But, just having a vision of a deity alone, if you don't have the correct view, yeah, that's not going to eliminate the obscurations. Yeah. People have all sorts of kundalini rising and all this stuff can happen. Yeah. But none of it eliminates afflictions from the root. Only the wisdom realizing emptiness can do that. Only the wisdom realizing emptiness can do that, because it's the only thing that apprehends exactly the opposite of what wisdom apprehends. I mean, of what ignorance apprehends. Okay, wisdom is the only thing that is the direct counterforce to ignorance. Nothing else is. Even bodhicitta is not the direct counterforce to ignorance, because only wisdom perceives the exact opposite of ignorance. Only wisdom knows that what ignorance perceives does not exist. Okay, so this is why gaining the right view and then meditating on it to develop into actual wisdom is so important. Yeah, because you can do lots of prostrations, you can do lots of offerings, you can have visions of the deity, your kundalini can go zapping all over the place, okay, but you can't even eliminate one affliction from the root. Okay? So that's why wisdom is so important. Okay? So realizing that importance of wisdom, that depends on really understanding, the 12 links, and especially the first link of wisdom. Yeah, when we talk about the first link wisdom, ignorance. When we talk about the first link of ignorance, what really do we mean by ignorance? Okay, so that's why we have all these teachings about what exactly is ignorance, and all the different kinds of ignorance, and all the different, wrong ways that different kinds of ignorance misapprehend things, so that we can see exactly what the wrong thing is, so that we can get an idea of what the correct view is, because it's the opposite. Okay? Yeah? And so here you can see why, it's so important to listen to teachings and to think about the teachings that you hear. Because if you just sit down and meditate, you can develop concentration. Yeah, even non-Buddhists have concentration, but that wisdom that understands what is samsara and what causes it, and how do I get out, and what is the cessation I'm trying to actualize, that's not going to come to you automatically without really, investigating and inquiring and looking at our own experience. Okay? And understanding these things. We hear ignorance, ignorance, ignorance. Yeah, ignorance. Yeah, ignorance is the root of samsara. Got to get rid of ignorance. But then all day long, we're like acting out of ignorance and we don't even realize it. Ignorance is there in our mind and we don't even see it. Okay, because it's much harder to recognize anger at least we can recognize sometimes. It may take us a while. Yeah, but sometimes we recognize, or attachment. Attachment's harder than anger to recognize, isn't it? We can have lots of attachment in our mind. We don't see it at all. There's no attachment. I'm not attached. This is just normal, and I feel good, and this is an attachment. It's very hard to recognize it. You know, the emotions that are painful, like jealousy or resentment or hatred, those are easier because, you know, there's a quality of pain to them. There's a painful feeling. But with attachment, oh, if I feel good, I'm not going to question this. Yeah, if I feel good, you know, why should I analyze and question what I'm feeling? Okay, and then ignorance is even harder to recognize than attachment. Okay? So this is why, you know, our teachers point these things out to us, but then we have to look at our own experience. And, you know, when is this arising in my mind? So we look while we're meditating. When is this, that, or the other thing arising in my mind? And then, of course, in our tumbler of daily life, are all the rocks are, you know, knocking against each other, then once in a while we notice, oh, why do I feel like a rock in a tumbler? That's because I have afflictions. What are those sharp edges that are getting knocked off? Oh, those are my afflictions that I'm clinging on to for dear life. Okay? Yeah? Okay. Is there any way to think of the Dharma and Sangha jewels as causal refuges? Of course. Okay, so this person is saying, I can't think of how to take refuge in an instance of meditative equipoise on emptiness in someone else's mind. Okay, because when the Dharma jewel, okay, are true paths and true cessations. So the true paths are, for example, meditative equipoise on directly perceiving emptiness. So when you take refuge in the Dharma, your causal refuge is in that wisdom that directly perceives emptiness, but it's a causal refuge. It's in somebody else's mind stream. It's not in your mind stream. Okay. So how does taking refuge in that realization in somebody else's mind stream benefit me? Yeah? Now, you would say the Buddha benefits you, right? Now, does the Buddha benefit you? Okay. What is it about the Buddha that benefits you?
Well, I was going to say, once I started that question, I actually had the same question about the Buddha. I mean,
no, stick with my thing. How does the
benefits by having taught what the Buddha saw?
Okay. And what did the Buddha see?
The Buddha saw the nature of reality as it is.
With what kind of mind?
A wisdom mind.
Right.
The paths,
the true paths. Okay? Yeah. So how is it that the Buddha is able to benefit you? Because he's actualized the true paths. So it's really the true paths and the true cessations that give the Buddha the power. It isn't just Buddha as some label. You're looking, what's the basis of designation of a Buddha? Those qualities, okay? So, you know, it isn't Buddha some abstract guy, and it isn't some guy with a yellow body, you know, radiating light. It's these qualities that give the Buddha the ability to benefit you. So you benefit quite directly from somebody else's meditative equipoise on emptiness. Okay, because that's what has purified their mind, which gives them the ability to teach you out of their own experience. Okay? So that's how you take refuge in the Dharma jewel that is a causal refuge that's in somebody else's mind. And that's precisely why they say that the actual refuge, you know, is the resultant Dharma jewel that we've actualized in our mind, because that's what's really going to protect us. Somebody else's, how does the Buddha protect us? Yeah, how does the Buddha protect us? How does the Buddha benefit us? By giving teachings. Okay? So when we take refuge in the causal refuge, it's, you know, the Buddha's benefiting me by the teachings. What gives the Buddha the ability to give those teachings? It's the true paths and true cessations in his mind stream, which is the Dharma jewel. Okay? So that's how you benefit. Got it? Okay. Okay. Then, what's the significance of pointing out the division of the Dharmakaya into the nature truth body and the wisdom truth body? If every conventionally positive phenomena has its own emptiness, then we're stating the obvious. Okay, so we have the Dharmakaya, yeah, so the Buddha's omniscient mind. But if we break that down into two bodies, we have the wisdom Dharmakaya, which is the omniscient mind of the Buddha, and then we have the nature Dharmakaya, which is the emptiness of that mind that in which all defilements have been ceased, like we're talking about today. So she's saying, why do we even have to talk about the emptiness of the Buddha's mind? Everything is empty. Okay? Well, if you don't talk about the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, it's very easy to start thinking that Buddha is some truly existent something. Yeah? Oh, Buddha is the only thing that isn't empty. Buddha is an absolute reality, independent of everything else. Okay? So that immediately stops us from seeing the Buddha as truly existent. It also emphasizes to us that in order to become omniscient, we have to realize emptiness and purify our mind of all the defilements so that we can attain that natural truth body too. Okay? Yeah? So it's emphasizing something quite important to us. Yeah, and it also is showing how all the different aspects of ourself get transformed into the Buddha, because the emptiness of my mind exists right now, okay? It isn't like the emptiness of my mind ceases when I become Buddha. It becomes the Buddha's nature truth body, which is, yeah, it's different from the emptiness of my present mind in the sense that my present mind is different from the Buddha's omniscient mind. But as the experience of emptiness, you know, when they're perceived, they aren't perceived dually like that. But, you know, it's the emptiness of a different mind. Okay? Okay. Finish those questions. Good questions. Yeah, somebody's thinking. Okay, so let's go back. Does anybody else have questions? Yes.
I just have a question from the earlier part of the talk.
Uh-huh.
Is that what they mean by the union of method and wisdom? What you were talking about with the need to have faith, confidence, and all those kind of things and wisdom?
Oh, okay. So when I was talking about the importance of having faith and wisdom, does that relate to the union of method and wisdom? Yeah. Yeah. When we're talking about the method side, it's not just faith, but it's also, you know, renunciation, compassion, bodhicitta, you know, generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, all those other kinds of virtues that you create. Those are all on the method side. Yeah. And then the wisdom is pertaining specifically to the wisdom realizing emptiness.
And that expression means that you need to cultivate both.
Yeah, you need to cultivate, well, because a bird needs two wings. Yeah? Needs two wings to fly. And the thing is, and that's why I was saying it's so important to have both, because it's the method side that makes your mind very strong, in the sense of the method helps to purify the karma that gets in the way. I mean, of course, realizing emptiness is the ultimate purification, but a lot of the method side purifies the karma before we can realize emptiness, and the method side creates all this merit. And that's why we read about bodhisattvas, you know, going off and making offerings to Buddhas and doing all these incredible things for sentient beings, and, you know, the Buddha's previous life, and offering his body to the tiger, and, you know, and watching all these virtuous deeds that our own teachers do. Yeah. So why are all these actions done out of compassion and bodhicitta is to accumulate the merit that acts as a base that makes the mind able to, that makes the mind receptive and makes the mind able in some ways to endure understanding emptiness. Yeah? I mean, because understanding emptiness, you know, has got to be something that completely is like the opposite of what we do, that like really knocks us off balance. Now, if our mind isn't stabilized with very strong refuge and trust in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and we don't have a strong base of merit and a lot of, you know, compassion and all the bodhisattva conduct, then you have this realization and you know, whammy, you know, you don't know what to do with it. But if you have, you know, you've done all the method side, then that really helps. Yeah? Okay. It's quite interesting when we study the paths and grounds, which I would like to teach. You know, the going from one path to another path is always done in terms of your realization of emptiness. It's done in a meditative equipoise on emptiness. Similarly, going from one ground to the other is always done in the meditative equipoise on emptiness. But once you've attained a new ground, you keep meditating on emptiness, but every meditation on emptiness doesn't bump you up to the next level. What is it that makes your meditation on emptiness, you know, go deeper and deeper? It's on that ground you're also doing all these method practices to benefit sentient beings and to make offerings and so on like that. And that, you know, enriches the mind and makes it stronger and makes the mind capable so that that realization of emptiness can, you know, go deeper. Okay? Yeah, and it's actually the method side of the path that makes the bodhisattva path much longer than hearers and solitary realizers. Yeah, hearers and solitary realizers, you know, collect merit 3 I can't remember if it's 3 lifetimes or 100 eons, you know, 100 lifetimes. I mean, not so much. It's not 3 countless great eons like a bodhisattva. It's the method side that takes so long. Yeah? But that's where you really see the difference, what a bodhisattva can do, you know, and how they use their wisdom because, you know, motivated by that strong compassion and bodhicitta.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying that meditation on emptiness is not itself a type of purification, or it does not generate merit?
Oh, am I saying that meditation on emptiness is not purification or doesn't generate merit? No, I'm not saying that. Meditation on emptiness is the ultimate purification because it's the meditation on emptiness that eliminates the afflictions from the root and that stops all the karma that causes rebirth in samsara. But until we gain the realization of emptiness, okay, we have to rely on other antidotes and other kinds of practices to subdue our afflictions. Okay?
On paths and grounds.
Uh-huh.
At that point, you're saying that you need to, the method side, you're generating merit, but you're kind of, you made delineation between that and meditation on emptiness, but it would seem that meditation on emptiness is generating merit and
Yeah.
purifying.
Yeah, right.
So it is the method side alone.
No, you don't call it the method side because it's really emphasizing, you know, realizing the right view. Okay? Whereas the method side is really much more the deeds and the behavior that are motivated by compassion. Okay? But of course, you know, when you think about emptiness, it generates some merit, and it certainly does a lot of purification. Okay. Yeah. So don't. It isn't like those things are sliced, and you know, nothing can be both of them. Yeah.
I have a question about how I heard that people have different dispositions. They understand the different
Yeah.
But then I also heard that, but it's important to have prasangika
Mm-hmm.
point of view, otherwise you don't actually get at what you're trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that what I'm saying is that would mean that the other schools aren't important, you only want to teach prasangika.
Oh,
But
okay.
if someone's understanding is at the level.
Okay. So you're saying, if prasangika is the one that actually cuts the afflictions, why do we need to learn all the other ones? Why don't we just go directly to prasangika? But then there's this thing of, well, maybe everybody's tendency and disposition isn't suited for prasangika. And that's very true, and that's why the Buddha taught many different viewpoints. Okay? Because the Buddha is concerned with people's long-term benefit. Okay? And for some people, learning the prasangika view at the initial thing is going to knock them off balance. Yeah? So it's much better for their long-term benefit to teach them a different view. Yeah? Because even with that different view, as long as it's not a nihilistic view, even with that different view, they can purify, they can create merit, they cultivate generosity, they can live a good ethical life, they can develop some wisdom according to that particular view of that particular tenet system. Okay? So they're gaining some benefit. And so the thing is really to see what we're doing as gaining benefit and progressing from where we are, into the future, instead of having our Western mind that says, oh, something is lower, I want the highest.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that's like being 5 years old and saying, kindergarten is so low. Yeah, kindergarten is for babies. It's for people who don't have the talent and the disposition to go to Harvard. I don't want to go to kindergarten. I'm 5 years old. I want to go to Harvard. That's not so wise. You send your 5-year-old to Harvard. That kid's going to get confused. Yeah, if you're thinking of the long-term benefit, it's like, go to kindergarten. Kindergarten is the best, right thing for you to do. Don't feel bad about being in kindergarten. Feel good about being in kindergarten. Because by being in kindergarten, then you can get to first grade and second grade. And eventually you'll get to Harvard. Yeah? But be happy you're in kindergarten. You're getting an education. Okay? So we shouldn't put ourselves down. See, this is, I think, something that I've realized. In the teachings, they always tell us the perfect way to behave and the perfect view and the highest. And what we do is we compare ourselves to that and say, it's too hard, I'm not good enough, why try? Whereas there's another way to look at it and say, that's the highest, that's where I'm aiming for. If our teachers didn't give us the whole view of what a bodhisattva does and these incredible bodhisattva actions, how are we even going to have the aspiration to do it? We aren't. So instead of comparing ourselves to a bodhisattva and saying, I'm nothing, say, that's where I'm going to be, and I'm in kindergarten now, but I'm going to get there. Okay? So I realized this is actually something, that is a big cultural thing, because most often in Buddhist cultures, because of course our teachers have to tell us the real way bodhisattvas practice. Otherwise, we're not even going to know it exists, and we won't even generate the aspiration for it. Okay? But if we look at it and say, wow, how fantastic, they can practice this way, and someday I'm going to be able to do that. And by giving somebody this carrot today with a bodhisattva motivation, I'm planting the seeds to generate bodhicitta and be able to give not just carrots, but everything to sentient beings. So I'm happy giving this carrot. Okay, instead of oh, all I have is a carrot, and I don't have real bodhicitta, and what a failure I am. I'm never going to get anywhere. Okay? So you see, it's just a thing of how our mind looks at the situation. That's all. Yeah?
For me, the words that are used really make a difference. When I use lower, higher, then,
When you lose what?
when I use the lower or higher,
Uh-huh.
my dumb mind wants to go to the highest, of course, in
Yeah.
a different way. But when I use coarse and subtle,
Uh-huh.
then that makes a whole difference to my mind.
I
Because
see.
I realize that I can see some coarse things, but I don't have the knowledge to see the subtlety.
Uh-huh.
And so then now I can work with that.
Okay.
That helps.
Okay, so you're saying that the language of lower and higher automatically sets something up, whereas the language of coarse and subtle doesn't have those same emotional charge for you, and that it feels comfortable to say, yeah, my understanding is coarse and it'll get more subtle, instead of my understanding is lower and it'll get higher. Uh-huh.
One thing I became aware of recently is that the way it's taught about how, the sharp faculty student who
Yeah.
about the wisdom thing,
Mm-hmm.
it makes you feel a little bit like you're denigrating the faith side. But then and that's how I took it.
That you're denigrating the what side?
Maybe the disciple who maybe
Oh.
has more devotion to
Uh-huh.
whatever.
Uh-huh.
But what I realized about that is that what you said recently is that you can get to the bodhisattva path without realizing it, with a certain level of faith and devotion on that side, can take you pretty far, much farther than I am today. So to me, it was like, I had never thought about it that way. I always
Yeah.
kind of denigrated it a little bit, and then it really changed it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, okay, so let me repeat it. So when we talk about, high faculty and low faculty, and people who are more kind of inclined towards faith and devotion, and people inclined towards wisdom, that it feels initially like we're putting down the people that are more inclined towards faith and devotion. But when you really thought about it, you saw that those people actually do get somewhere on the path, and they can actually attain the bodhisattva path of accumulation, and then start developing their wisdom and, progress along the bodhisattva.
Both simultaneously, but it seemed like it had denigrated the one, and so I was shoving it aside.
Right. So I think what they're doing when they say that is, kind of I think what they do, and it backfires, is they're trying to get us to really get some enthusiasm for trying to develop the wisdom side. By saying, the wisdom side is, that's a sharp faculty. Well, I want to be sharp faculty. Okay, I'll study harder. That'll motivate me to study harder because I want to be like that. But we don't hear it like that. We hear it as, they're putting down the faith. I really like devotion. I'm not going to get anywhere. But that's not necessarily what's being said or the purpose of saying that. Do you see how our mind can take anything and turn it into a hindrance? Yeah? We can take anything. Yeah? And turn it into a hindrance. And so that means we can also take anything and turn it into something that inspires and encourages us too. It just depends on how we look at it. So that's the thing, is to watch how our mind frames situations. And if we are saying something in such a way, like, I'm denigrated, to say, no, that's not what the Buddha intended. Yeah? Buddha said this to encourage me to, maybe I should study a little bit harder. That doesn't mean forget my devotion and faith. That's really important, and it'll certainly get me a lot further where I am now, But maybe I should spend an extra 15 minutes a day just trying to, stretch my wisdom a bit.